हम लोग फ्लड्स की बात करते हैं, उनके नंबर्स ज़्यादा हो गए हैं। कंटिन्यूअस रेन की बात करते हैं तो वो फ्रीक्वेंसी ज़्यादा हो गई है। ड्रॉट की नंबर्स ज़्यादा हैं। हीट वेव्स की इंस्टेंसेस बहुत ज़्यादा हो गए हैं।
एक कोई भी ऐसा डिजास्टर आएगा एंड सम ऑफ दीज कंट्रीज आर आल्सो एक्सपेक्टेड टू एक्चुअली बी कंप्लीटली सबमर्ज्ड और अंडर वाटर बाय 2050.
मे बी गवर्नमेंट के एंड पे पॉलिसीज बन रही हैं, ये बन चुकी हैं, बट इन्फोर्समेंट सही से नहीं है।
So in India itself we see many districts which used to be threatened with droughts are now being suddenly threatened with floods.
How will you get the money for the adaptation?
29 billion is what only that much amount is flowing in globally as tagged adaptation finance.
Why not other states are following it? It is the mindset or the conviction.
We are seeing that these extreme disasters are getting more and more pronounced.
दोस्तों, जीटी लॉग पॉडकास्ट के इस एपिसोड में एक बार फिर से आप सब लोगों का स्वागत है। मैं अनुराग बाजपेयी, आपका होस्ट, और मेरे साथ मेरी गेस्ट हैं तानिया बनर्जी। तानिया, जीटी लॉग पॉडकास्ट में एक बार फिर से आपका स्वागत है। तानिया हैज डन हर बैचलर्स इन आर्किटेक्चर एंड मास्टर्स इन सिटी प्लानिंग फ्रॉम IIT खड़गपुर। उसके बाद तानिया आपने EY या अर्नेस्ट एंड यंग में काफ़ी साल काम किया, एनर्जी एफिशिएंसी एज ए डोमेन, और फिर अभी BCG या बॉस्टन कंसल्टिंग ग्रुप में आप काम कर रही हैं एंड टेकिंग केयर ऑफ द एनर्जी एफिशिएंसी इन क्लाइमेट चेंज और रेजिलियंस एज ए डोमेन. You want to add anything else also to this?
Well, firstly, thank you so much, Anurag, for having me on this. It's a matter of great pride and privilege to be able to talk on this topic and conversation बातचीत हम आज करेंगे तो बहुत खुशी हो रही है उसके कारण. Just to add on my background, so yes, I do carry an architecture and urban planning, city planning का background. फिर मेरा काम डिकार्बनाइजेशन पे काफ़ी हुआ है मेरी करियर के शुरू के वाले हिस्से में. Then I had the opportunity of working with multiple countries, India, Bangladesh, Bhutan, Nepal, Mauritius, and Turkey as well, on industrial decarbonization. And had the opportunity of working on climate finance, which is the biggest talk of the town when it comes to climate change as a topic today. And now I'm also co-leading the topic of adaptation and resilience in BCG. So very, very happy to be here and very highly looking forward to our conversation today.
Thank you so much, Tania. So let us discuss about the climate resilience and change, the scenario. In general, when we see the occurrence of the climate change, they are very much like visible. हम लोग फ्लड्स की बात करते हैं, उनके नंबर्स ज़्यादा हो गए हैं. कंटिन्यूअस रेन की बात करते हैं तो वो फ्रीक्वेंसी ज़्यादा हो गई है. ड्रॉट की नंबर्स ज़्यादा हैं. हीट वेव्स के इंस्टेंसेस बहुत ज़्यादा हो गए हैं. When we look at such scenarios, they are very visible compared to maybe I think 10 to 15 years before. Now, you mentioned that you have worked in all specific, maybe 7 to 8 countries. Let us talk about the region, Global South. How do you see the climate change as a scenario in the Global South? How this particular activity is impacting the Global South as a region? What is your perspective on this?
So Global South, of course, is at massive risk. And that is a function of the geographical location or placement of some of the countries, some of them being small island developing nations, and also the economic development trajectory that some of these countries are in. आज इंडिया का growth इतना promising है, so we are still having the right wherewithal to be able to manage a disaster. But for some of the smaller countries, which are small island nation states or atoll nations, एक कोई भी ऐसा disaster आएगा and some of these countries are also expected to actually be completely submerged or underwater by 2050. The nations will cease to exist. So that's the risk that we are looking to scale in. Interestingly, the way disaster or climate patterns are changing. So climate has of course changed. We know climate has changed. Climate change is changing too. What that means is the way climate parameters had been predictable in the last 20 years, 30 years, that degree of predictability is going down with every passing day. And that is a function of कि हमारा यहाँ पे decarbonization का भी आ जाता है, because your GHG emissions, greenhouse gas emissions are going up. They are disrupting the whole climate balance, and it is impacting or coming in the form of extreme events which have become more erratic, more unpredictable, and hugely shifting patterns. One data I would like to share is if we look at the last 25 years, 9,000 disasters have hit us globally. 9,000 disasters. Now, if we rewind back to the previous quarter century, this is double the figure. So 4,500, 4,500 amount of disasters used to hit us at that point of time. That has become 9,000. So the doubling has happened in just these 25 years. Yes. Let's talk about economic losses. So economic losses also in the last 25 years, if we look, 2000 to 2025, globally it has reached a record. Actually, it has quadrupled from the last 25 years to a massive figure of $3.7 trillion, just by the sheer scale of unpredictable, complicated, and increasing scale of climate-induced disasters. Now here, of course, when I say climate-induced disasters, there is a scientific body that also talks about how much of it is climate-induced, how much of it is geoclimatic, because some earthquakes also resulted. But we can safely assume that going forward, the direction is this, that climate-based disasters will be becoming more and more recurrent, more unpredictable. We will not know when what will happen. And the third part is changing patterns. So in India itself, we see many districts which used to be threatened with droughts are now being suddenly threatened with floods. So they don't know that forever historically they have seen that, okay, we don't know what to do in droughts. But then flash floods are coming in and they are completely unprepared. Similar is the flip happening. Districts with flood prone nature are actually facing droughts now. So this shift again hints at how much unpredictable behavior of climate change is driving us to a point where we will not know what to prepare for. And this is the alarming future that worries me in this whole sphere of building adaptation and resilience. And the only worry here, biggest worry here, is that with every passing day, we are missing it's slipping away. So that's the risk scale of the challenge that we are dealing with as on date.
Very nice. So Tanya, I think with this, there is always a question, which is a follow-up question on this, कि in general risks जो है वो अनप्रिडिक्टेबल है ना, बहुत सारी चीजें हो रही हैं, रिवर्ट्स भी पैटर्न you have mentioned, they are visibly available, and the cities which are growing, they are growing very fast in lot of the countries, even in let's say in India also. कुछ नई cities like Amravati, they're also getting built as well. Or cities by and large, they are maybe outskirts, they are getting stretched to maybe up to the rural area, to the peri-urban area. और इस तरीके से जो डेवलपमेंटल ग्रोथ है, that is very much like visible to our country. Whenever we look at the maybe economical growth and the ecological balancing, there is always a challenge. It has been a challenge across the globe earlier also. Today's scenarios also. Most of us, we also have this acceptance, which is not maybe I think the good way to accept. But this is also the acceptance that when we grow, there is maybe ecological disturbance that has to happen. And that is the reason that people in general have the apathy towards such scenarios. सभी लोगों को पता है कि एकदम से चीज़ें चेंज हो रही हैं, फिर भी मुझे लगता है कि ज़्यादा प्रिवेंटिव मैकेनिज्म्स नहीं उठाए जा रहे हैं. मे बी गवर्नमेंट के एंड पे पॉलिसीज बन रही हैं या बन चुकी हैं, बट इन्फोर्समेंट सही से नहीं है. प्राइवेट सेक्टर के लेवल पे भी इस तरह की जो प्रिवेंटिव मैकेनिज्म्स हैं वो इतने embrace नहीं दिख रहे हैं as of now. What do you have to say in terms of how when we look at the stakeholders at the city level, how should they start preparing themselves to meet the climate resilience as a requirement?
So expansion is way of life. हम आगे बढ़ेंगे जब हम अपने cities को बड़ा करेंगे. Population is on a rise, so we will need more space, we will need more resources, and that is the way any country will advance. And India today is on a brilliant economic trajectory. So there's always this debate around should development come at the cost of our resources or come at the cost of our ecological balance. And this debate has been on for the last 100 years. It will continue to be so. So इंडिया का स्टांस जो रहता है कि हम डिकपल करेंगे अपने इकोनॉमिक ग्रोथ को इकोलॉजिकल बैलेंस से. So that's the mission statement that Indian government has also been planning, and I've worked very closely with the Ministry of Environment as well, and we've had this shared vision agenda for seeing how India needs to progress on environment and climate change. Now, having said that, I actually see the expansion of cities, expansion or growth, physical growth into peri-urban areas, an opportunity to do it right. What right now happens is, जो हमारा age-old belief है, construction techniques है, thinking है कि जिस तरीके से हम पहले build करते थे अपने buildings और even infrastructure, उसी पे हम continue करेंगे. And that will not work. So when we are building a satellite town, वहाँ पे ये इसका ध्यान रखना कि it is going to be around the ecological balance of that place. हम सबसे कम trees cut करेंगे वहाँ पे. हम सबसे ज़्यादा उसका nature का जो integrity है, we will keep that at the heart and design the city around it. And this is a very famous concept called a garden city as well. कि if you are designing a new city from scratch, then can we design it around the nature that exists there, and can then human and nature thrive together? And there have been so many garden cities that have been successfully deployed in the whole world as well. But I think ये एक opportunity है हमारे लिए to get it right. एक है कि physical infrastructure क्या ध्यान रखना. So physical infrastructure, when we are designing for that particular city, of course, there are some norms, guidelines and bylaws to abide by. But उसमें हम क्यों ना सोचे कि resilient infrastructure बनाते हैं. Yes, it will incur a 2 to 5% or sometimes even 7% additional cost, because your resilience parameters, resilience reinforcements will be over and above the current infrastructure cost that you will have. But that value, that cost that you will put in today will help you in protecting those infrastructure assets for decades to come. And जो आज के डेट में हो रहा है, और ये एक टॉपिक मेरा बहुत ही पैशन का एरिया बनता है कि आप इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर बना रहे हो, उसमें आप रेजिलेंस डालो तो आपका इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर चलेगा फॉर इट विल जस्ट हैव इट्स लॉन्जेविटी बिल्ट इन. एंड दैट इज जस्ट वन वे ऑफ मेकिंग श्योर दैट द सिटी दैट यू आर बिल्डिंग और द सैटेलाइट टाउन दैट यू आर बिल्डिंग is able to withstand climate pressures of the future, and much of which is going to be unpredictable. So you over design and build it. That's one way to look at it. The other element of it is green infrastructure. So infrastructure के जब हम बात करते हैं तो we always talk about green infrastructure. That's the first thought that comes to our mind, that roads बनाएंगे, bridges बनेगा. So you make that resilient, which is fine. You can't build a city without roads and grey infrastructure, hard-coded grey infrastructure. बट उसमें हम नेचर इंटीग्रेट करते हैं, और इसके भी काफ़ी सारे बेस्ट प्रैक्टिसेस और एग्जांपल्स इंडिया में भी एक्चुअली है. ग्लोब में तो है ही, वर्ल्ड ग्लोबली वी सी अ लॉट ऑफ सच एक्सपीरियंसेस. तो उसमें हम ऐसे ग्रीन इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर को अपने ग्रे इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर में इंटीग्रेट करते हैं, ताकि इट विल ऑल्सो हेल्प इन जस्ट नॉट building you pro-climate or proof your infrastructure or build assets on against climate, but also help on environmental parameters such as air pollution, which is such a big area of problem as we are sitting right in the thick and thin of it. So just to sum up, that I see the developmental agenda of any country and building of more cities and towns as an opportunity to do it right, have the right mix of infrastructure which you can build as resilient, and also build it around the ecology that you have in that place. अगर वेटलैंड है तो उसके अराउंड सोचते हैं कि उसका सिटी प्लानिंग कैसा होगा या अर्बन प्लानिंग कैसा होगा. And if we can do it right, and there are models that are available, then it is a great direction to be headed in.
Very nice. I'll just take a cue on what you have mentioned, Tania. So you mentioned resilience comes with the cost.
Yes.
And I also have the firm belief on this statement as well. There are 2 points. When we look at the cost in terms of the incremental cost, and the second is in terms of the awareness cost, right? In most of the cases, when we have seen the cities getting damaged with, let's say, cloudburst, recent example, Sahasradhara Road, Dehradun. Several examples, they are already there. Planners or the city planners or the town planners, they understand that maybe I think before 100 years, the city at that particular location had that maybe the water body, the flowing water body as a part of the river stream or something else. But still they allow the city to get developed in terms of maybe buildings, houses, and so many other infrastructure as well. It means that this is a negligence at one point of time. The second is, you mentioned that the resilience comes with the cost. It means that we need to have the technology because growth is the inevitable component. We have to grow, but the growth has to be sustainable. When we look at these two aspects, both aspects require the cost or the finance. You have mentioned that you have been working in the climate finance as a subject. My question is, let's say for the awareness, I think we can talk a little later, but for the infrastructure, when we look at the technology side, when we look at the knowledge side, so many other infrastructure requirement, we need the additional cost. You mentioned 5 to 7%. For a homeowner, it's still manageable. For a city, it's a cost. There is always a number which has been predicted that maybe I think India requires, let's say, $1 trillion, 2+ trillion annually through 2030 to meet the climate resilience as a goal. When we look at the climate finance as a subject, how tough it is in terms of making the finance available for such technology interventions so that the sustainable infrastructure can be built?
That's a very important point because this is a struggle globally. And the first point that comes to my mind is if we look at the pure adaptation finance gap today, and I'm coupling adaptation and resilience as one topic just for the sake of simplicity for this moment. The adaptation gap itself lies in multi-billions as on date. And I think, if I remember correctly, 29 billion is what only that much amount is flowing in globally as tagged adaptation finance. The gap is in billions, hundreds of billions already. And we are also globally almost set to miss our Glasgow Climate Pact adaptation target as well. So adaptation finance has been a tricky topic. And the investors are also not very sure of how to mainstream adaptation in the adaptation support in their portfolio. I'm talking about commercial investors or institutional investors more so in this context. So whose commercial interests will be such that if you will have to compare between technologies that are proven, that are tried and tested, that have reaped benefits, that give you the payback, whereas some of adaptation technologies are not. So, for instance, coming back to the point that you were making around reinforcing infrastructure suitably to make them resilient, the ranges also that I mentioned is very hyper-local. So, what it will mean for reinforcing one road stretch in certain part of India will be completely different from another part of the world. So, that range is also very, very indicative, and that is another reason. The hyper-local nature of resilience itself is also another parameter which creates this confusion about how much to invest, what will be the impact, how, even if I am investing into adaptation reinforcements in a particular area as one of my portfolio projects. What is the sure return that I'm going to get on it? Which is, again, it brings back the comparison with decarbonization technology because they are more proven. And even if not proven, the economics is more easier to establish. Even if we are talking about some of the much more forward-looking technologies like carbon capture, utilization, storage, and so on. So in terms of climate finance for adaptation, it has been a gray area, or it has remained underfunded for several years now because of these issues, because of lack of clarity of what kind of adaptation pipeline exists in terms of priorities for a particular country, what kind of bankability of the projects exist because of the sheer complexity of how adaptation technologies and projects are, and then the hyperlocal nature of adaptation itself. But what we are also seeing is a sea change in how climate finance for adaptation is shaping up. One excellent example that I like to talk about is how Green Climate Fund has apportioned that portfolio. That a massive percentage of the project that goes for GCF, goes to the GCF board for approval, needs to be on adaptation. And that cut is also at their overall portfolio level, which means that one of core GCF's mandate or Green Climate Fund mandate is to support adaptation projects. Now, of course, GCF, as we know, that it's supported by different country financing, developed country financing, development banks, and so on. So there is a potential and a mandate that the Green Climate Fund can work with. Similar is the case for many other development finance institutions. So Asian Development Bank and the World Bank also have very clear mandates on supporting adaptation and resilience projects in their overall portfolio. But for some of the commercial investors, it is always a case of how much of a bankability the adaptation space is going to be. The only problem here is that you cannot make a whole sector work with climate finance that is only concessional. What we get from a Green Climate Fund or from the development finance institutions is, of course, concessional financing. And you get the benefit of technical assistance, you get the benefit of grants by which you can do some of the baseline studies, which are extremely important. But that cannot be the long-term answer. The role of these institutions is to mature and mobilize the market enough so that the private sector is brought in, so that the private sector is mobilized. Where adaptation today is that the private sector mobilization, what has actually been already kick-started in decarbonization since the last 15-20 years, is very, very early stage in the case of adaptation. But there are some interesting examples that I would also like to share, that people are thinking innovatively of how to go about climate finance for, say, resilient infrastructure, the topic that we were talking about. So there is a fund called ICRF, which is more Africa-based, which has come up with it's a blended fund. It's run by a private financial institution, managed by a private financial institution, but actually with the mandate of supporting resilient infrastructure, both in greenfield case, which is new infrastructure that is going to come up, as well as brownfield infrastructure that is already present. So this is one example. There are a couple of such similar funds as well, which are focused on the topic of resilience alone for infrastructure. And there are, of course, for agriculture as well, resilient infrastructure, resilient agriculture, advanced agri-tech, climate resilient agriculture. So there is a sea change that we see in the last 5 years, but very, very early days. These examples need to be scaled up in a big way. And that's how climate finance will then not just be a development sector conversation for adaptation, but also actually have private sector come in, private investors come in. One last point, that in this whole area of climate finance, because there are so many sources, and the Paris Agreement also talks about utilizing financing from all sources of finance, there is the whole element of philanthropic capital, which needs to be wisely used. And the moment we are able to leverage philanthropic capital effectively, if we are able to leverage it to more than 4 times of what money has been put in, then we know that there is more impact that we can get out of it. We are just able to mobilize more financing from the rest of the ecosystem players and make it work. So innovatively thinking about it, making the right use of patient capital, which comes from philanthropies and foundations and high net worth individuals as well, and development finance, wise use of development finance as well, is going to make this story work commercially for the long term. Otherwise, it just runs the risk of being supported by development institutions, which can only take you so much to such lengths.
Yeah, I totally also agree to this statement what you have mentioned कि जो भी फंड्स हम लोग बात कर रहे हैं, डेवलपमेंट फंड हो, फिलैंथ्रोपी फंड हो, हाई एच&आई फंड्स हो, ये सब मोबिलाइजेशन फंड ही हैं. दिस इज स्टिल लेस. Maybe I think blended financing is one specific tool which has helped, maybe I think collaboratively to make the fund size bigger. Otherwise, there is always a challenge. There's one stat that I remember कि इंडिया में जितनी भी क्लाइमेट फाइनेंस की रिक्वायरमेंट है या बेस्ड ऑन द क्लाइमेट रेजिलियंस, ये जो एनडीसीज हमने डिफाइन किए, उसके हिसाब से लगभग 13% डोमेस्टिक फंड अवेलेबल है एंड 87% इंटरनेशनल फंड अवेलेबल है. इसका मतलब है कि अगर हमें इतनी डिपेंडेंसी है इंटरनेशनल फंड्स पे, तो उसके लिए फिर एफर्ट्स उतने ही तेजी से बढ़ने चाहिए. अदरवाइज आर एफर्ट इन टर्म्स ऑफ मेकिंग द इंडिया resilient from such challenges, वो तो लिमिटेड हो जाएगा. 13% से तो कुछ नहीं होगा, right? So that is one thing. The second point that you have mentioned, Tanya, is bankability. So how to, maybe I think enhance the bankability, because हमें भी लगता है एज ए प्राइवेट सेक्टर, वी ऑल्सो फील दैट अनटिल इस प्राइवेट सेक्टर का पार्टिसिपेशन इस एरिया में नहीं आएगा, ये सब चीज़ें एक तरीके की पायलट प्रोजेक्ट्स, डेमोन्स्ट्रेशन प्रोजेक्ट्स, फिलैंथ्रोपी रिपोर्ट्स, ऑल दीज में ही सिमट करके रह जाएंगी. तो अगर बैंकेबिलिटी इन्हांस करनी है प्रोजेक्ट वाइज में और आरओआई विजिबल दिखनी है, तो मतलब व्हाट इज द मेजर इशू दैट यू सी? एंड अगर मैं पूछूं कि 2-3 एस्पेक्ट्स क्या हो सकते हैं, आई ऑल्सो हैव सम पॉइंट्स टू और मेक, बट अगर सोचा जाए कि एक सिटी को ग्रोथ मॉडल पे रखना है, सस्टेनेबल ग्रोथ मॉडल पे, और उसके लिए फाइनेंस अवेलेबल कराना है, उसमें ब्राउन फील्ड और ग्रीन फील्ड दोनों ही प्रोजेक्ट्स हैं. ग्रीन फील्ड के लिए जनरली फाइनेंस इकट्ठा करना इतना मुश्किल नहीं है. ब्राउन फील्ड के केस में जो नॉलेज अवेयरनेस है, दैट इज ऑलवेज अ चैलेंज, बिकॉज उनको टेक्नोलॉजी इंटरवेंशंस का आरओआई नहीं समझ में आता है फाइनेंसिंग पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू से. उन दो सिनेरियोज में अगर हम बात करें कि जो लेट्स से बैंकेबिलिटी के लिए ऐसी क्या चीज़ है जो कि उनका कन्विक्शन, द फाइनेंस इंस्टीट्यूशंस का कन्विक्शन बिल्ड किया सके? इज देयर एनी इंश्योरेंस रिक्वायरमेंट या कुछ और चीज़ हो सकती है, ताकि जिसको अगर टेक्नोलॉजी बिल्ड करनी है या टेक्नोलॉजी इंटरवेंशंस लाना है टू मेक द प्रोजेक्ट मोर रेजिलिएंट, उसके लिए फाइनेंसिंग शुड नॉट बी द चैलेंज. 5% डिमेंशन है, देयर हैज टू बी सम लिस्टेड 5 इंस्टीट्यूशन जिसको उसको तुरंत पैसा मिल जाए. That is maybe the fundamental question.
Bankability adaptation में is a widely discussed topic, and widely discussed because उसका हल इतना आसान है
नहीं है बिल्कुल,
क्योंकि टेक्नोलॉजी, अब जब हम बात करते हैं, अगर लेट्स कंपेयर विथ से एन एनर्जी एफिशिएंसी प्रोजेक्ट वर्सेस एन एडेप्टेशन प्रोजेक्ट, it's very easy to define or identify the parameters of an energy efficiency project कि these are my control measures. इस तरीके से मैं अपना प्रोजेक्ट IRR को इंश्योर करूंगी, एंड देन आई नो दैट दिस विल बी अ feasible project. रेजिलियंस में ये होता है कि इतने सारे लेयर्स होते हैं, सो दैट bankability itself is a hard topic to really talk about, and it is also very case specific. कि एक पर्टिकुलर प्रोजेक्ट का जो bankability डिटरमिन करेगा, और जैसे हम उसको स्ट्रक्चर करेंगे वैसे उसकी bankability डिजाइन होगी. Like you mentioned that having multiple sources of financing readily available, or baking in appropriate insurance mechanisms, वो सब डिसाइड करेगा कि हम कैसे bankability को लेके आ रहे हैं उसमें, इन्वेस्टर्स को भी सही से लेके आना. So all of that will determine how feasible the project is going to be, which is a bit multidimensional. So the way we look at adaptation bankability is हम project list पे पहले काम करते हैं कि अगर हमारा priority, so we what, and this is a live work that we do with the governments also, we've done it with multiple country governments. तो हम उनके साथ बैठ के क्या करते हैं कि आप अपनी प्रायोरिटीज बताइए कि अडेप्टेशन अगर हमें करना है तो ये 15 या 20 प्रोजेक्ट का एक लिस्ट हमें बना लेना चाहिए पहले. लिस्ट मतलब कि एरियाज. सो फॉर एग्जांपल अगर मैं इंडिया का नेशनल अडेप्टेशन प्लान अगर मैं सोचूं उस बारे में, तो अगर एग्रीकल्चर सेक्टर में हम बात करते तो उसमें ड्रिप इरिगेशन एक एरिया बन जाएगा. उसमें द गवर्नमेंट विल डायरेक्टली टेल मी दैट ड्रिप इरिगेशन में हम फोकस करना चाहते हैं. Then some other areas, organic farming, natural farming is a pet project of the government itself, so which is working very well. So उस पे हम focus करना चाहेंगे. तो priority areas पहले निकल के हम लेके आते हैं उनसे. Then we go back and start our assessment around उस पे क्या सब प्रोजेक्ट्स बन गए. तो प्रोजेक्ट एरियाज बन गए. So उसमें क्या सब प्रोजेक्ट्स बन सकते हैं कि अगर मुझे ड्रिप इरिगेशन करना है, and I'm taking very simple example, ड्रिप इरिगेशन किस स्टेट में करेंगे या 2-3 स्टेट्स में एक प्रोजेक्ट बनेगा एंड उसके ग्राउंड कंडीशंस क्या होंगे, किस रेट ऑफ इंटरेस्ट में कॉस्ट ऑफ कैपिटल क्या होगा, एंड ऑल ऑफ दीज देन स्टार्ट शेपिंग द फाइनेंशियल मॉडल फॉर द feasibility model for that particular project. So it's a journey from priority areas to identifying or doing the pre-feasibility assessment for the sub projects. और फिर उसका हम पूरा feasibility निकालते हैं जहाँ पे ये the whole answer of bankability comes in. And we take the governments also through that journey, because unless and until you see that क्या आपके priority है और वो project कैसे बने और ये वो that project makes techno-commercial sense, that is what we have to show them, and there is no one answer to it कि कैसे हम उसका bankability improve कर सकते हैं. So if we are working say in the Philippines, it will be a very different feasibility model that we'll work with. If it's something in India with say the Northeast, then it will be a very different regime. But it's again tying back to the point of adaptation itself being hyperlocal and the projects also having to be designed with those guardrails in place. But some of the common guardrails are to have the right amount of insurance built in. So in adaptation projects, there is a huge acceptability coming up of late of parametric insurance. तो ये एक काफ़ी हम सुन रहे और देख भी रहे कि that it is on the offer. Then reinsurance भी offer कर रहे, काफ़ी सारे blended funds या funds for climate adaptation में offer कर रहे. With the inclusion of technical assistance, technical assistance अपना baseline study करने में help करता है to set the जैसे हम if I draw an example कि quite often for many companies energy audits become very expensive. So अगर कोई help मिल जाता है for companies to do the energy audit, set the baseline और फिर उसका implementation, then they'll take care of. So similarly यहाँ का adaptation audit equivalent अगर मैं बोलती हूँ तो then that all those preparatory groundwork is then helped by the technical assistance जो grant के हिसाब से आ सकता है. So structuring in terms of having the right development finance institutions come in with low cost of capital, grants, but also mobilizing or leveraging enough to bring the private capital in is what tends to be the answer for establishing the bankability and having the right IRR which you need to make. But having said all that, even then matching the returns with if I compare with a decarbonization project is still some time away. So it will not come at a as high as an IRR of what you see in a decarbonization project today. But it has कहीं पे तो start करना पड़ेगा. So that's where it is going, and that's how some of these private investors are coming in, because they would not have set up such funds like the ICRF example I took if they did not see commercial interest in it. The interesting part is GCF had also helped because it was a project that is supported by the Green Climate Fund. And adaptation में green climate fund as a source उसका help लेना is something that even India is doing in a great way. A very recent example is SIDBI, Small Industries Development Bank of India, has recently got a project approved on supporting adaptation technology development and implementation in the MSMEs, which forms the industrial backbone of India. So अगर MSMEs को हम resilient बना सकते हैं through this kind of help, then we are actually tackling such a big part of India's resilience movement, so to say, and the industrial backbone that I talked about. So these are the different facets of climate finance and how bankability is really having to be worked out. But again, it's very hyper local, so it needs to be worked out specific to the context that we are talking about.
I totally agree. I think the specific to the context is required. Maybe I think I'll also take one more example. Since you have mentioned decarbonization has a better IRR. Let us say we work in the cooling specific projects, and this is a decarbonization projects where the less efficient cooling has to be replaced by the high efficient cooling. In most of the cases, the financial institutions do not believe on the return or the IRR on such things. And that apparently the challenge with almost all the nationalized bank or even the financial institutions which lend the money for the technology interventions. How to build the capacity for those in maybe in financial institutions so that they can start understanding, even if you have the report, but this report is not the guarantee to get the fund from them. So I think when you have a better IRR, still you are not able to fetch the money. How will you get the money for the adaptation? Yeah, so that is always a long drawn process. What do you have to say in terms of building the capacity for the institutions like the financing, financial institutions?
No, you're absolutely right. And this area of capacity development or the gap thereof is common to the entire climate domain, irrespective of whether it's adaptation. Adaptation, I would say, yes, it's even less mature because, or in some cases, it's all for, and it also depends. So some states which are more threatened or seeing the impacts of roads being washed away, villages being washed away, they know that what's in store from the climate induced hazards, and adaptation is a topic that we have heard of which will help us get there. So when we talk to some of those more prone to climate threats states and districts, this is the kind of feedback they wouldn't know what to do, but they at least know that okay, there is something that exists. Same is the case for decarbonization in terms of capacity. I would have hoped that it's gone up because decarbonization is not a yesterday's topic. It's been on our radar for the last so many years. But I completely agree that when it comes to financing, the awareness around the why of supporting such technologies, be it of decarbonization in this case, is still a gray area. And I think here there are 2-3 areas where we should look at in terms of capacity upliftment. And here is where government also has a major role to play. So we know about different training programs that are also done by the Bureau of Energy Efficiency and other very, very great institutions. But that's also for only the select segment of energy auditors will have go through that training and very specific set of people. I think that training of capacity development for different sectors. So financial institutions being trained on climate change. Is there a training program that exists? Is there an awareness program that exists today? And these are questions that I just throw out to the audience also as I speak. Secondly is the citizens themselves as well. And when I talk about, when you talked about energy efficiency, my mind directly goes to, again, the users of energy efficient devices, much of which are citizens. Do they know how to operate energy efficient devices appropriately? So the awareness the programs need to be built also to cater to different figments or segments of the ecosystem, which are, of course, the ones that will finance the projects, which are financial institutions, and that curriculum needs to be very, very different. You will talk about the project's feasibility, its overall impact to climate change, and how it helps India in going towards its NDC targets, which I think is a disconnect that many don't make. It's not a connection that when you talk to some financial institutions, it's very short-sighted, right? What is the immediate net gain that I'll get? What is the long-term vision that is mostly not seen? And this becomes even more important in the adaptation case because your returns are actually never immediate in adaptation. At least in decarbonization, you can still say there's a payback. There's an IRR and there's a financial paper पे हाँ math में दिखता है, adaptation में वो भी बहुत difficult है आज के लिए. So tailored programs which cater to the financial institutions, to the citizens, to the practitioners as well. Practitioners who are working in the space of energy, do they know everything about what it takes to run as a practitioner? So in terms of formal training is fine, but also in terms of having very targeted programs for all 3-4 different ecosystem players, I think is very important to uplift the capacity level of this of where we are right now. And I think what the importance of having capacity building programs is one aspect of the story. But the other more important aspect that I feel is how is the capacity being developed? So what is the mechanism in which some of these training programs are happening? Quite often if it is very instructor-led, very one way, and the mode of training and sensitization or capacity development is very unilateral. So quite often, and we also tend to do this as part of our projects. So I myself have very early on in my career had the opportunity of training very senior professionals in Bhutan. And बहुत मजेदार experience था वो. I actually learned more than what I could. I always say that it's not a instructor and student relationship, but it's always you learn from each other. That's when rich education exchange is happening. And उसमें मुझे ये पता चला था कि उसमें 2 components थे. एक तो था कि एक क्लासरूम हम करते थे जहाँ पे कॉन्सेप्ट समझाना, and they used to come from all different backgrounds. So government officials who were from energy department, of course, but also from public health division or many other urban development division. So all of these divisions, they used to come, and they would not have the basic knowledge of energy or climate change always. So we had to go down to the basics and start from scratch, and then we had these week-long trainings with them. फिर एक हमारा field visit होता था जहाँ पे वही हमको लेके जाते थे because it's their country, they would be the best place, and then there we would do it like an immersive thing. So for example, one very vividly, one case we very vividly remember that we were doing it on energy efficiency in buildings as a training. And one of these programs, immersion programs, was to take them to one of the best hotels outskirts of Thimphu and walk them through how the building is energy efficient, what kind of materials have they used, why is it managing energy efficiently, why is the energy balance working better as compared to other buildings. So ये हम पूरा वहीं पे diagnose करते थे, and we would do it as one group. Even the trainer is doing it with them because the place is completely new to the trainer. I learned the most, and the attendees also learned the most in that particular segment in comparison to all the in-classroom sessions that we had done. तो मेरा पॉइंट यही है कि किस तरीके से हम लोगों को इम्पार्ट कर रहे हैं एजुकेशन becomes very important, and that is not true for only youngsters or whichever stage of the development journey they are in. Interesting ways of imparting education सबको अच्छा लगता है, and I think if that innovation in training, education, and capacity building can also be applied for technical topics. Nothing like it, which I think is a gray area that we can really, really work upon. ये आज के डेट में इतना है नहीं जितना होना चाहिए. And in many of the foreign curriculum we've seen that किसे immersive ऐसे programs होते हैं. So we can also take learnings from there and apply in addition to the great programs that we already have, ताकि ये सारे knowledge gaps जो है, awareness gaps जो है, ये seep in हो. सिर्फ program करके आ गए ऐसा नहीं है, but it's actually internalized within each who's going to evaluate your cooling proposal and approve it. I think that's very, very important.
Very interesting. I think मुझे भी लगता है कि जब हम लोग इस तरह की ट्रेनिंग या कैपेसिटी बिल्डिंग प्रोग्राम की बात करते हैं, it is more towards how to make the science based communications more appropriate, because आपका सब्जेक्ट और अटेंड ऑडियंस का सब्जेक्ट नॉलेज वो डिफरेंट है, और उसके लिए there has to be some common ground where the communication has to get established. और उसके लिए मुझे लगता है कि वन वे कम्युनिकेशन is the worst case scenario. There has to be some immersive component. आप जाएं, केस स्टडी लें, बातचीत करें, get their feedback, how do they perceive the problem statement, and then solution निकालें. I remember recently I was invited to EC mode, and then they brought in a lot of journalists and the communicators, maybe almost 5-6 countries, and they put the problem statement कि जैसे एयर क्वालिटी एज ए सब्जेक्ट है, उसके बारे में इन जनरल लोगों का अवेयरनेस बहुत ही पुअर है. एयर क्वालिटी एंड द क्लाइमेट चेंज का इंटीग्रेशन मॉडल भी दे हैव एस्टैब्लिश्ड थ्रू द साइंटिफिक रिसर्च. उनका कहना है कि एयर हमें जो कार्बन पार्टिकल्स हैं, they accumulate over the glacier snow and they form the black carbon, and because of the black carbon it absorbs more sun's radiation, and that is how the melting rate is much higher compared to the earlier ages. And this is something which is very maybe I think it is easy to understand, but in general maybe I think the government agencies, the policy makers, they may or may not be able to correlate why the air quality as a subject needs the maximum attention at this point of time to take care of the climate change as a subject also.
And that's the beauty of it. So we always sometimes tend to think that okay, climate change is one dimension, environment is another. They actually influence each other so much, and that science is to be understood. Which अभी उसको कैसे communicate करें, because this science is so complex. हम IPCC की बात करते हैं, हम जाके COP में negotiate करते हैं. I have been in COP negotiations. I've been privileged to also witness some G20 negotiations as well. और इसमें it's like an echo chamber. Only specialists will talk about special topics, whereas it's coming and impacting people like you and me. If we were not to understand climate change at all, we would have been equally at risk, right? तो ये टॉपिक इतना बोर्डरूम डिस्कशन लेवल पे बिना रख के just translating it into grassroots level. आज के डेट में if a coastal flood hits, the coastal community is at stake. They need to be first equipped with the knowledge to deal with it. उनके घर चले जाएंगे, तो they will lose their houses, their assets over years of generations. But they don't know what to do about it. So वो knowledge, वो awareness grassroots तक पहुंचाना हमारा एक duty है. It's a basic responsibility that I at least as a practitioner feel. And वहाँ पे मुझे एक गैप तो बिल्कुल दिखता है, which I think
एक क्वेश्चन मुझे याद आता है कि for example you mentioned the boardroom. Let's say if you are part of the boardroom discussion and then you really realize that someone who is speaking is not apparently correct, because you have the specific data which shows कि जो वो बोल रहे हैं वो सही नहीं है. ये बहुत कॉमन इंस्टेंस है या वन ऑफ द इंस्टेंसेस है?
Yes and no, depend करता है. Of course, I've had instances where जहाँ पे wrong data or data by mistake is being used to project certain thing. But I would say कि वो वो भी change हो रहा है. So in the last 10-12 years that I've seen, the kind of boardroom topic this used to be, or more so today we call it as ESG as a topic, although I have my own thoughts on ESG as a topic, and climate is of course one figment of it. But today the boardroom is more equipped or more aware of what's happening around them in terms of climate. I think partly it's also because of the whole noise that is there around climate. It's interesting times, and this is a great point because it's also a time to get confused to the hilt. On one side, geopolitically, we are seeing what the biggest superpowers of the world are taking stance in terms of climate, moving away from Paris Agreement and so on. And on the other hand, we are seeing that these extreme disasters are getting more and more pronounced. So all assets which are infrastructure assets which were not threatened so much 10 years back, today can actually get washed off by a sudden flood, by a sudden event, climate induced event. So even at the corporate level, I'm keeping the regulations and the other regimes aside, SBTI, etc. But it's just a dichotomy of how the world is changing or thinking, and it's very interesting to see this. Are you a climate denier, or do you believe that this exists? Yeah. And the boardroom top corporates are waking up to the challenge. And this is where the CEO level leadership becomes absolutely important. That what does your CEO think? That does he or she believe that climate change can become one of the biggest disruptors of my business operations in the next 5 years, or not? And we see the contrast as well. In cases where we see that conviction, it trickles down to the team as well. Yeah. The whole organization is also geared to think in that, because the direction has also come. Whereas if it's not that strong at the top level, you see there's a difference in how things are. So I think, long story short, to answer your question, yes, boardroom पे जब ये इस तरीके के data discuss होते हैं, it has happened so many times, but then awareness आज के date में at the board level on the topic of climate and sustainability is at a much higher level. And this is a function of the actual influences, physical influences that you see, the kind of economic erosion that we see, people actually losing billions of assets. One example, in Germany, a private railways player, this was in, I think, 2021, and in Western Germany, the rail company, the private company, lost about 1.3 billion worth of assets, $1.3 billion worth of assets for floods that came in. And almost 80 to 90% of it was uninsured. So you're facing these challenges directly, right? They're right in front of you, they're right in your eye. So you can't ignore it beyond a point today. And probably that is one more biggest function of, what you see is what you believe. It's coming to that point. And I think the third point is also around some of the global regulations that are coming into the picture. Let's take the example of carbon border adjustment mechanism by the EU and now many CBAM. तो अभी काफ़ी दूसरे countries भी इसको डालेंगे. So UK is already gearing up, Canada is also in talks, and many others. So a corporate actually which is export oriented, and आज के डेट में इंडिया में जितने hard to abate है, hard to abate sector के companies है और जो export कर रहे हैं, steel हो गया, तो they have to prioritize this as a topic, even if they don't want to. So that regulation, the global regime of regulation is also driving change, in certain cases forcing them to think differently, which is also good in a way that it is building in resilience, or it is building in awareness. But of course, there are several commentaries around what is the right way to do CBAM. There is a whole company export driven company that is dependent on it. So what is the long term sustainability of the company that is now put at threat? But all of that aside, the market forces, the international forces, regulatory forces, the physical forces that you see right in front of your eyes, and the function of how the world is changing is what is driving this as a priority topic at the board level for most companies. And I see that as a very positive trend. It's a good change.
You also mentioned, Tania, that there are two school of thoughts at this point of time. One is pro, one is against.
Yeah.
Which one is maybe, I think, winning the race?
Since I am a passionate climate practitioner, and having now worked in this space and also worked with grassroots very, very strongly, I cannot side with the fact that climate deniers are to win. I would always say that the ones that are accepting climate change are the one to win. And I would like to believe that that number is higher.
Let us also talk about the implementation side. In most of the cases, when we look at the policies enforcement in India, such policy enforcements are pretty much like on the lenient side, because maybe I think most of the enforcement mechanisms, they are pretty much like on the maybe appeasing based mechanisms. So my point is, let's say most of these cases, the enforcement mechanism is not as effective as it is supposed to be. When we look at, let's say, urban scale level, the enforcement mechanism through, let's say, environmental impact assessment, or the let's say pollution control bodies, or even the energy efficiency based regulations, they are struggling in terms of getting implemented in the right way, right? They do not require the financing, they only require the right mechanism to implement. Maybe I think it requires the right communication. That is one. The second is the maybe alignment of the enforcing agencies. They should understand that why this particular enforcement is very much important for the climate resilience or climate change. Why this maybe I think non-alignment, or maybe I think less alignment to such enforcement, which we all understand that they are important, but maybe I think it may or may not be communicated well to the down the line people, that this is actually important not only for the country, for the government, but for the people by and large as well. Why this communication is not getting happened?
It's a very, very pertinent point you bring up, and I do want to make it clear in the whole scheme of things today that the world has been good in planning forever. With different countries, of course, some of the first world countries have always been the front runners in putting the right plans in place on time, making sure that they are, submitted to the UNFCCC or even their internal plans. For India as well, I think we have done very well on the planning journey. Yes. Some examples, and I'll just answer the question in a bit of a journey approach. And in terms of planning, if we look go back to 2008, so our National Action Plan on Climate Change had come out as early as 2008. It had 8 pillars, and then the states were also asked to make state action plans on climate change, put out the commitments that the state want to prioritize, how much money they will require in order to prioritize climate change, what kind of areas and projects they would want to implement. So the planning for how at the national level for climate change and then the state level also was put in place. It was also put in place to revise the state action plans on climate change on a regular basis, which still continues. Then in terms of having put the missions at the right time, so we have the green hydrogen mission, we have schemes coming in for battery energy storage, large-scale battery energy storage. We have the viability gap schemes also to support the uptake of large-scale energy storage. So the planning and the regulation part of what we are supposed to do, I think India has been very proactive in most cases, more often than not, to have it out at the right time. Another example, which is having the whole national carbon market for India, which is also in the making and in very advanced stages. So the moment India has its own national carbon markets, the demand for indigenous manufacturing of such technologies, such as for hard to abate decarbonization or green hydrogen, even in case of the Article 6 of the Paris Agreement, if you are getting into bilateral arrangements with other countries. So all of these regimes have the right platform to drive change. And I think India has been quite a front runner and very proactive in terms of putting the right policies out at the right time. But rightly, as you mentioned, and this is probably not just an issue of where we are, but for many other countries, is A, the pace to implementation, and B, implementation itself. So translating from plan to implementation has been a challenge, and that we see in different facets of climate action. Let's take the example of adaptation, so to say. So in certain states, adaptation-based agriculture implementation or precision farming, some of the agri-tech which is pro-adaptation, are taking place, but in pockets and pilots. I wouldn't say that there are not good enough pilots that India has today, which do not demonstrate the success of such technologies. So technologies exist, the plan exists, the landing ground exists, and pockets of successes exist. Where I think India has had maximum challenges in scaling those successes to an economy-wide scale, economy-wide level. So for instance, if there is a pilot in some district of Assam, is that getting translated to all districts of Assam which can actually implement that technology? The answer is not really. And the same is the case for all other districts as well. So the gap that I see is not in having successes, but in the scale up of the successes that we see in pockets. And the way to do that is, of course, one way that is the key to do is communication, and also believing in the fact that that solution can be replicated in other places. That element itself today is missing. So what will have to be done for it? So to scale up a small successful pilot to others, you will actually have to do a scale up study to understand that what is the impact that if I take this lift and shift this project to another area, what kind of cost economics does it work out to be, what kind of impact in terms of benefits and co-benefits does it work out to be, and what kind of indirect impacts also in terms of green job creation, livelihood generation, improved quality of life, which can also be quantified today. So how is that impacting? Then you have an economy-wide answer. So the moment you're able to scale that pilot and justify it with, in this case, numbers as well, that is one way to look at it. But even with that feasibility in place, the communication of that feasibility becomes important. Are the state authorities realizing that there is an opportunity that exists? Even if, say, some institution, some very capable institution does this study, is that study being widely spread enough and then actually implemented? So my questions are in these regards that if the pilot exists, why are we not scaling it up? And the way to scale up would be demonstrated through an on-paper study first, but you will have to give it the due chance that, okay, if we implement it, it can work. It can fail too, but then you have to take that risk. I think that element of conviction in the communication and in the study itself needs to come. So the major issue, I think, from an Indian perspective, is not exploiting the scale-up opportunity enough, which is a major gap area as well as an opportunity. Actually.
Maybe I think one reason for such maybe I think difference to me, maybe I think all the states, when you look at all the states and maybe I think their respective governments, they have their own convictions. Maybe I think these convictions are prioritized by their maybe specific issues, uh, or maybe I think the maybe I think the issues or the government priorities based on what is the budget size that they have, what are the major issues that they have, and etc. But maybe I think one more thing that I have also noticed, that when you look at the leadership at the central, they have certain limitation in terms of implementing a lot of policies at the state level. State also has have the limitation in terms of implementing the policies at the district level, despite the fact that the power at the district is always governed by the state. It is not that the district has the power to implement. Still, the states, some states are actually moving with better speed, some states are not moving with better speed. I understand that there must be some specific reason in terms of what is the health of the state in terms of the GDP of the state, or maybe other specific areas that are part and parcel of this growth difference. But in general, if we look at one specific example, let's say we see the Telangana is moving in particular direction, which is there. Why not other states are following it? No. So when you mentioned the pilot exists, model is there, but still other states are not following. No. So it is the mindset or the conviction.
Yes, it's a chicken and egg situation also to some extent, and I think it's also a bit of a political matter that comes in, with between states learning from each other. But I would also like to mention that, and through our work itself, we are seeing states willing to learn from each other more and more. We're seeing a change there as well. And we've been part of programs, I've been part of programs where the whole concept was to demonstrate a model, a governance model that works in one state, and see if that works in some other states as well. And that's where state-state exchange, partnerships, where officials of one state go and see the successes seen in the other state, and vice versa. So these are happening. It's not that this is not happening, but again, I think this takes me back to the point of small scale versus large scale. In some states which are comfortable with each other, this exchange is happening, but it's again in pockets. The question here is that, can this become an economy-wide program where this exchange program within states, within India itself, can become formalized? And of course, this is where the central role also comes in a big way. And I think efforts are there to bring this, bring some method to madness in this. The reality of the fact is also that India is such a vast country, and every state is like a country in itself. So bringing that uniformity is not an easy overnight task. And this will be a struggle to continue for some time. But I think what the positive part I see is that learning from each other states' successes is something that I have been privy to, and I'm just hopeful that that will just increase going forward. The other interesting example is that we've seen many states take up Viksit targets. And that also follows from, one state sets up Viksit targets, and then some of the others also then follow suit. So in a way, it's sort of driving healthy competition also, that since it is inspirational, right? So one state is driving the other to also consider Viksit state targets. Sometimes it's also enforced by the central level, but it then drives uptake of certain ambition from one state to the other, and then 2 to 5 states, 5 to 10 states. And today I think majority of Indian states have a Viksit 2047 target that they have mainstreamed for themselves. So those are the positive parts that I see, and some changes happening.
That is always, let's say, because the Brexit target is related to the GDP numbers, and the target is also far away. So we can always have the target, which is maybe I think 20-22 years ahead. But when we look at the enforcement, which is to be done maybe tomorrow, there is always a challenge. But that is how the excitement lies in such struggle. And as you mentioned, there is always a hope. So we all live up to that hope as well. Very great. I think we have discussed a lot of things. We have one small rapid fire round also. Yeah. So the first question is, let's say you have done a lot of projects in different countries. Which one specific country which has given you the best excitement in terms of giving you the response back like nick of time?
India.
Is it?
Yes. And the project has been of immense pride to me personally in my professional journey to work directly with the government on the India's G20 presidency. And that gave me an opportunity to witness many things for the first time with the Ministry of Environment together. So I would always rate that as the top project, or something which has really changed my outlook towards many things in this fraternity.
Very nice. Apart from this, any specific climate project which has given you the maximum satisfaction?
I would say when I unlocked about $350 million for Bangladesh government through Green Climate Fund, that was another project that gave me a very big sense of fulfillment, because that money was unlocked to help energy efficiency improvements in industries of Bangladesh. And we could see making that money unlock happen for the country was also something that was very special.
Very nice. One specific question with respect to maybe I think the personal choices. For example, when you look at the specific city, because you being the city planner, you see a lot of cities which are well developed, they are functionally very well. Let's say barring Chandigarh and Gandhinagar, which one Indian city is the best city in terms of livability perspective?
Well, I have not lived there, but my family has, and what I hear and what I know from that city, I think Indore is one fantastic city to be staying in. In fact, my husband studied there, so what I have seen, I've been to Indore, but not lived there. And the city was very impressive from cleanliness, and it has been at the top rank holder for several years now on cleanliness and Swachh Bharat rankings. So I think that is one city I would recommend.
Very nice. Which sustainability habit that you have adopted lately?
I think lately I wouldn't say, but one very small thing is switching off lights when I'm not there. And in fact, also switching to smart lighting, which auto disconnects itself. So smart lighting and optimizing on lighting load is something that I've been doing for several years now, and continue to do that.
Any heritage city that you really feel that is a sustainable city in true sense?
Difficult question. Heritage city, I think I take go back to the place where I belong from. I belong from Calcutta, and Calcutta has its own heritage of several history and architecture. On sustainability, I think much more is to be done. So wouldn't say that there is entire work done on sustainability, but I think there are various pockets of good practices, such as good solid waste management, good energy efficiency that the city had been practicing from some time, which needs to be scaled up at a large level. But I think I would directly go back to my hometown and make the rest of the work also happen.
Okay, very nice. Any specific book reference that you want to recommend?
Not something that comes to my mind right now, but a little bit of a different answer to that is climate change as a topic is so much worth reading about. And I would actually advise to not restrict to one book, but just read whatever is there out as content. What I used to do when I was very new in the fraternity, in the space, was every keyword, new climate buzzword that I would hear, I would just go and Google it up. And then, the whole set of resources follow, that what you can read, what you can understand from it. And then the understanding of that particular topic then goes up. So my advice, if somebody asks me for a book recommendation, would be to ditch just one book, but explore the entire wide array of climate terminologies and read that. And today, I think Gen AI helps us do this so easily. There is no dearth of resources.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Tanya, for the great support. I think it was a great discussion. I have also learned a lot from you, and I'm hopeful the audience would certainly be enjoying the discussion. We have touched a lot of topics, I think a lot of length that we have covered in terms of climate adaptation, decarbonization, then financing. Climate financing is one thing which is required a lot of attention at this point of time. And then the enforcement or implementation. I think these are the specific topics which needs to be discussed again and again. And this may be the first and foremost discussion that we have had with you. Maybe I think there'll be a series that will come again. But thank you so much for patience listening. I thank our guest Tania for giving a lot of, maybe I think, detailed, descriptive responses to the questions, and it must be a great learning for all of you. Thank you so much. If you really want to connect to Tania, we'll also share her LinkedIn ID in our channel description. You can always connect. If you want to give the specific comment or suggestion for the next guest, you are most welcome. You can always connect at social@greentree.global. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Tanya.
Thank you so much. Pleasure is all mine.
Thank you. Thank you so much.